Welcome back to the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we featured Chattanooga Whiskey. They were featured right before COVID, and we are excited to have them back. And we're going to talk all things Tennessee High Malt, the differences between that and Tennessee Whiskey, and just what's happening with the brand overall. So sit back and buckle in and listen to our newest episode featuring Chattanooga Whiskey. Tim, co-founder of Chattanooga Whiskey, is joining us today. So Tim, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you guess for having me again. 4 years, right? Something like that.
Time flies.
Wow.
Time flies when you're making whiskey, right?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on what side of the business you're on. It also feels pretty slow sometimes, just waiting for the product to get ready to go to market. But it's been good for us. I mean, last time we talked, it was COVID had just set in, and we were really unsure about the future of our business and the industry, and the next few years really turned into a rocket ship, and it's been a lot of fun to be a part of the growth, and now we face different challenges. So, but I'm happy that 4 years after the last time we talked, I'm still here and still love what I do. So,
no, that's awesome, and I'm glad things are going well. So, for our listeners who haven't gone back and listened to that episode, can you just give us a little bit of what's happened in the last 4 years and how that rocket ship has kind of put you all in position to continue to do what you all love to do, and that's innovate and create unique and distinct whiskeys in the marketplace?
Yeah, well, fortunately, we have two distilleries in downtown Chattanooga, and we established the experimental distillery in 2015, which produces 50 barrels a year, and we established the Riverfront Distillery in 2017, which produces 2,000 barrels a year. And just before COVID, and I think I mentioned this actually in the episode 4 years ago, that I was grateful if I could have picked a time if I could have picked a time for COVID to happen related to the timing of where our business was in its life cycle. I was grateful that if it was gonna happen, it happened after we launched Chattanooga 91 and 111 because we were replacing a sourced bourbon that was originally from MGP. That was the bourbon that we had been selling for many years leading up to that launch. And that was one of the most pivotal moments in our company's history, was that transition from a sourced to 100% authentically made. And we got through that transition we ripped the Band-Aid off of the sourced bourbon in August of 2019, switched 100% over, launched our fourth market. So it was Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama. Excuse me. Then we launched our fifth market in Florida, and we needed. There was a momentum was critical, right? Momentum was critical to build the brand. We needed that momentum. We needed the accessibility to our markets, right? And that timing could have been horrific for the business had that happened at the same time, right? So we were fortunately in the late summer, early fall of 2019, we transitioned over, and then because we built Riverfront, because we were laying down, at the time we were laying down 1,200 barrels a year, and we've since scaled to approximately 2,000 barrels a year. But again, the timing of having our supply, our own supply, 100% made, not having to source throughout COVID, that would have been really challenging too. And the fact that we were able to scale, from making 50 barrels a year to making 1,200, 1,500, 1,600, now 2,000 barrels a year, and thinking that when COVID hit, my God, we might have to turn the dial back, turn it down, and preserve as much money and as possible in order to hold on to the business. And we decided not to do it. We felt like it just would have been a huge mistake to make such a rash decision. And we kept all of our people employed, and we kept our foot on the gas, and that wasn't just my decision. That was a group decision, and really largely inspired by my chief product officer, Grant McCracken, that said, dude, the future is bright for Chattanooga whiskey, and we're going to make it through this pandemic. We need to keep our foot on the gas. And looking back, it's almost like unbelievable that what took place after that, right? For the industry as a whole, I think, for the spirits industry, especially for the bourbon industry, for the bourbon market, and especially for Chattanooga whiskey, because soon as the lockdown was lifted, the support was insane. The brand really blew up, and we grew more than 50% in 2020, more than 60% in 2021, and 70% in 2022, and then the market has shifted quite a bit, and we haven't added any states. We added one state, Wisconsin, but I couldn't have anticipated that hockey stick that happened coming out of COVID. And I'm just so thankful that we had the pieces in place, that we had already we got the transition behind us. We had scaled, we had enough whiskey to sell of our own. And it just worked out really, really well. We have new challenges now because the market's softened and there's a lot of competition, et cetera. And I'm happy to touch on that too. But we throughout that a couple more details over those 4 years. So we launched 91 and 111 in August of 2019. We launched 99 Rye in 2020, which to our surprise made Whiskey Advocate's top 20 right out of the gate, which was a really cool accolade. And Rye did really well. And it's a malted rye, so it's not your typical rye. We launched Barrel Finishing series, which we've just released our fourth Barrel Finishing series since then. We launched our Bottled and Bond, which we have 2 vintages per year, spring vintage, fall vintage every year, that are different blends of multiple different recipes. We've launched Founders, which has done really well, and that's an annual, kind of like our birthday bourbon release. And then we have single barrels, very, very few single barrels that we do as well. We won Craft Producer, both for America and worldwide by Whiskey Magazine, the Icon Awards last year for 2023, which is something we're really proud of, and we believe that we've put the work in and earned that. And we continue to push the envelope with releases out of Riverfront, where we've scaled more than 30 recipes from the experimental up to Riverfront. And we push the envelope at experimental, where we've now, since 2015, we have laid down approximately 475 experimental barrels and released more than 80 of those labels to the local market. So a lot. We've done a lot, and we and we haven't let off the gas at all.
That's a hell of an update right there.
Sorry, it was a little long.
No, you're good. I think I left the board meeting and I got excited as an investor, right? Like that's what that sounds like. One of the interesting things, just being a founder of a whiskey brand, when you hear those types of numbers, which seem really astronomical, bourbon has not been immune to mergers and acquisitions, right? And you see this happen left and right. So putting yourselves in a position to grow and to be that way, I'm not going to say never, but what do you think of when the industry, when you see all the mergers and acquisitions happening, and some people are just looking for an exit, right? Like, how do you all want to position yourself for the future?
Well, we don't want to sacrifice the integrity and what we mean to the community. Really, those two things, right? The integrity, our brand integrity, our product integrity, our cultural integrity, and our community integrity. And I believe that you can find a partner or you can sell a company to the right partner and you can keep those things intact. For us, and we have been approached several times, and we've had a decent offer, but we still feel like we have a lot to give, and I do believe that it's possible that the company can only grow so far under my leadership, right? But we're in our 13th year. I'm 42 years old. I feel like I shouldn't be aiming to retire at 42 years old. I mean, it's just not I just don't think that that's necessarily a healthy mindset. And I don't have any plans to do anything else. I'm not a serial entrepreneur. So, so it's not just about the money. It isn't, it really, there's more to it than that. I mean, yes, there are times where it's hard to run a business. And culturally, we've had a lot of challenges over the last several years, a lot of social pressures, and it's been difficult at times to manage through that. From which actually I'm really proud that I managed that we were able to manage through those conversations, and it's not like it's over. It's never going to be all right. It's just right now we're at this whole world's at a whole new level of transparency, right? Like I take a lot of pride in transparency and transparency with our teams, and so. I don't know what the future holds other than I know what we can keep doing, right? Like Chattanooga Whiskey can continue to kick ass and take names. And we can continue to be the best in craft in Tennessee and the best in craft, I think, in the US. And I think the best in craft in one of the best in craft in the entire world when it comes to distilling and specifically distilling whiskey. I think there's still a lot of people that don't know about Chattanooga Whiskey.
Yeah,
we distribute in 16 states, and we're fairly new in a lot of those states. There's, for the first time ever, we have $1 million marketing budget. I mean, that's we've been doing this for 13 years and we've never spent $1 million on marketing. Now, for craft, $1 million sounds like a lot, right? But if you think that Chattanooga Whiskey is a national bourbon brand, then $1 million is not a lot of money, right? So I mean, it's all about the perspective. So, man, I got a lot of fight left in me, and I want to continue to grow it, and I'm going to have conversations along the way. But it's all about protecting the integrity of what we've built and continuing to grow that, and protecting the integrity within the community, because Chattanooga Whiskey has become a pillar in the community of Chattanooga, which is really incredible. And our story is one of the. I mean, again, 13 years, not that much time relative to brands that have been around for 100 years, but in the 13 years that we've been around, I think we have one of the most interesting and well-rounded entrepreneurial like craft whiskey stories in the game. And so that is not just going to be handed off to anybody. And it is very possible that this becomes a family business for forever, and it becomes a locally owned business for forever. And right now, that is my mindset. My mindset is that this is. I am proud to say that we are independently owned. We are locally owned. That I'm still fortunate to be at the helm, and I have no plans to sell it. I have gotten some offers that I'm proud to say were pretty nice offers that I turned down, and I won't say that the right fit in the future couldn't happen, but that is not on the table right now. So
no, I think that's awesome. And I'm glad you explained it that way, right? Because it's about a culture, it's about a movement, versus, just making a payday. And I think sometimes a lot of people get into something and it's just about, I'm trying to make a quick buck. That's why I tried to get into cryptocurrency, and I got in when the downturn happened. So that didn't help me very much. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. And I think what you're saying personifies the bourbon and whiskey community, which is a community that looks after each other, that is, always trying to push boundaries and really try to develop. So, for me, I feel like it just fits the mold of the story of what bourbon and whiskey is.
yeah, I think we play an important role now in bourbon and in being one of those bourbon brands that's still independently owned, that after a long time is still growing and is still pushing the boundaries of craft. And in a lot of our peers, I believe, have sold. And especially, ones that have gotten as large from a case volume perspective or from a revenue perspective. And it's not like we're large, but again, from a craft standpoint, I mean, we've scaled pretty decently over the years. And I feel like a lot of the brands that are talked about as our competition have sold, and I don't know that I don't feel that a lot of the ones that have sold have done particularly well post acquisition, and that would crush me if Chattanooga Whiskey was in that position.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about a craft brand having independence and being able to, something you guys like to do, experiment and put out innovative products, put out different products, put out just things that people might not have ever heard of. So it's like you have the level of independence to where you can do that.
Creative
and I'm not
freedom,
saying that,
man.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that big brands don't have some creative freedom, but they also have numbers that they have to meet, and they're looking at the core lineup.
They don't. None of them have anywhere near the creative freedom that we have.
Yeah,
We have complete autonomy. If we want to come in here tomorrow and just dream up a recipe and be distilling it, we can do that, right?
yeah.
But I think we have been really responsible when it comes to that. I mean, some people might look at us and be like, 475 experimental recipes, like you haven't been responsible at all. But we've siloed that. That's served its own purpose, right? Like that is within the Chattanooga Whiskey experimental distillery, and that's we have set that up to experiment and to be our R&D and to inform what we do at Riverfront and how we go to distribution. We are very careful with making sure that there is a great level of consistency when it comes to the products that you see on the shelf. We've gone through label transitions and we've tweaked recipes, etc. But we understand that we have to be consistent if we're going to generate awareness, and if we're going to generate trial, and if we're going to get repeat customers. We have to have a consistent presence on the shelf. We have to have a consistent product, and so even though we do all of this craft and all of these recipe developments, I still think when you walk into a liquor store, in one of our 16 markets, hopefully you're going to see the flagship lineup, and you're going to see it in the right order from left to right, and you're going to see it in the right spot on the shelf, right? So there is definitely a level of focus and responsibility within that autonomy and within that creative freedom.
Yeah. And I know, like, for me, when I see experimental batches coming from distilleries, it's good to have the consistent product, because you know that what they put out every day is consistent, is excellent, and you don't mind to go out on a ledge and grab something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because it is a risk, right? It's every time somebody puts a bottle out, it's a risk that you don't like it.
It
so
helps
you don't mind to do that.
Yeah, it helps if the brand has an established respect and credibility. Because if obviously if it's nothing but experimentals and there's a lot of polarizing, flavor profiles and recipes and or maybe some stuff just isn't good, um, and that's your only impression of the brand, well then, yeah, like you're going to have a really hard time scaling, right? You're going to have a really hard time growing that brand.
Yeah, and I think another thing is the way you've done the experimental stuff, right? You're not putting it in like 1,000-gallon fermenters or 15,000-gallon fermenters. You're putting it in a very controlled environment. So you are responsible. But I do want to dive in talking about mash bills and experimentation. Is the Tennessee High Malt movement, right? That you all have created a style of whiskey inside of Tennessee, and the ability with the beer community, like giving you a lot of probably opportunities, right? With malting and all the stuff they've done, years past, how do you all continue to innovate with malt, especially as in the opportunity for American single malt comes to fruition as well here in the States? You all have kind of a leg up in that opportunity as well, because your Tennessee High Malt is a lot of malted different products. So just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, working with specialty malted grains is our foundation. That is, we coined and trademarked Tennessee High Malt when we built the experimental distillery. We immediately started exploring specialty malted grains and bourbon specifically, right? And we've gone beyond that. We do American single malts, and we do rye malts. We do bourbon infusions. We've done high malt bourbon mash bills that we've turned into gin for experiments, of course. So Tennessee High Malt is our core differentiator, and you can do a lot within that. We've worked with hundreds of specialty malted grains, and that hasn't changed. I would say, if anything, you're seeing some of these more recent experiments that have come out, like this Krauter liqueur, which is a popular German digestif. And some people are looking at that going, wait a minute, like, is that whiskey? Like, is that bourbon? Like, can you do that? Like, can you make something that's like Jaeger? And the answer is yes, absolutely, you can. Now we pride ourselves on working strictly with real ingredients, right? So these botanicals that we're using, there is no flavor added to any of this stuff. It is all real stuff, and it comes out, tasting like this beautiful root beer with this hint of anise, and I mean it's got this kind of bourbon foundation to it, and nobody's done anything like it before. And so that's an example of, we worked with German pale malts for as a foundation for that recipe. There's a lot of stuff that you can do that we have done. I mean, even our barrel finishing series, I'm actually sitting here looking at one of our sales sheets. Even our barrel finishing series, like the most recent release it's hitting the market now. It's called this is our white port cask finished. We've done 4 barrel finishes over the last 4 years, and none of them have just been our 91 recipe. I mean, think about that for a second. Like, even with and these are multi-thousand case releases. The vast majority of the industry is doing their barrel finishes with their flagship recipe, right? That's what we've come, and they make great products, but it's always been just about the barrel. It's been about the tawny barrel, right? Or whatever barrel it might be. For us, the barrel is always a really important part, but the recipe, the grains that are going into it, is the foundation. So, for example, the first release we did, Tawny Port, it was a blend of 6 different recipes featuring lots of different specialty malted grains. And these recipes were selected by our distilling team of 15 that, of which 6, have an R&D background. And they're not just randomly grabbing recipes and mashing them together and be like, oh, this ought to work. They're actually choosing recipes based on flavor profile that would go well with a Duro Valley tawny port barrel, right? And this, so 6 different recipes blended together on that one. Our Scotch cask had multiple recipes blended together. Our Silver Oak Cabernet Sauvignon finish last year had 5 different single malt recipes blended together. This white port cask finished has 3 different recipes blended together. Now, our 91 recipe is in there, but it also features a wheat malt recipe that has, chocolate wheat malt in it. It's got, and it has caramel wheat malt in it. And so there's so many amazing things we can do because we work with so many different specialty malted grains that I just don't think anybody else has, or they can't do that because they haven't explored to the degree that we have explored.
So then, with the finishing series, you've blended several mash bills, but have you put out any products which are not finished that are a blend of mash bills? Is that part of the experimental series, or?
Oh no, I mean our barrel finishing. So 91 and 111 are the only 2. So there are flagships, right? 91 is 91 proof, 111 is 111 proof. 91 is a Solera barrel finished. 111 is not Solera barrel finished, but it is unfiltered and it is a single batch, meaning it came from a single fermentation. The beauty of, so those are the only 2 labels that share the same recipe: 4 grains, 3 specialty malts. All right, so non-GMO yellow corn, malted rye, caramel malted barley, honey malted barley. Now there is blending that happens with those, and it is because when we distill a batch of the 91 recipe, or 111, which is also the 91 recipe, each batch is 8 barrels. So 4 of those barrels go into a 4 char, and the other 4 barrels go into a 3 char with a custom toast profile. So we put those barrels away to age, and then we will, after they're fully matured, for 91, we will do our 4,000 gallon White Oak Solera barrel is a 50-50 blend of 4 chars and 3 chars with a toast, right? So we're blending the different toasts and chars together to drive richness and complexity. And we do that with 111 and bottling as well. But we're not blending recipes for 91 and 111. We're not blend. So 99 rye has its own 4 grain 3 malt recipe. It's actually 60. It's actually 60% malted, 3 different malted ryes, and 30% and 40% non-GMO yellow corn. So it's technically a rye malt whiskey, not just a rye whiskey. But it has its recipe, and it goes into custom toasted barrels as well, and it's unfiltered as well. So those 3 are going to be the same recipe every single time. Now, bottled and bond is a blend of different recipes every vintage, and it checks all the BIB requirements. Right, it's 100 proof. It's distilled in a single distilling season. It's a minimum of 4 years old. It's distilled at a single distillery. Like, it checks all the boxes of the 1897 Bottled and Bond Act. But guess what? It doesn't have to just be one recipe. It can actually, as long as those recipes have been distilled in the same distilling season, your spring season or your fall season, you can blend them together.
Yeah.
And it can be a bourbon, right? So every vintage of BIB is a different blend of recipes, usually like trading out like one recipe for another recipe. It's not as extreme as barrel finishing series, right? You're going to get a lot more. Even though they're different recipes, you'll get a lot more consistency out of BIB. It will change. It does change. It's meant to change. But your barrel finishing series, we're blending. It gets crazier, right? Barrel finishing series gets crazier. Founders is a blend of our 3 Solera barrels, right? We have a 4,000 gallon white oak Solera barrel, a 1,700 gallon white oak Solera barrel, and a 700 gallon white oak Solera barrel. And only one time a year do we bring those 3 barrels together for Founders. But there's always a different percentage of those 3 barrels. So you're never getting the same percentage of the 3 barrels, right? So Founders is a different blend of recipes every year. And then, of course, we've got very few single barrels that we do. Single barrels are, they're a blessing and a curse. We turned it off for a while because it was a racket. Now we're turning it back on. But we do it our way, right? I mean, we're not blending recipes because it's a single barrel and it's a true barrel strength single barrel. But you don't just have to get a 91. For the few that do get single barrels, sometimes it's a 91 barrel. Sometimes it's a Scotch cask barrel, like a Scotch recipe that has smoked malts in it. It could be you can choose from a roasted recipe barrel that's utilizing drum roasted malts, like really, really dark chocolate malts in there. And we're about to turn on rye malt single barrels as well. Outside of our 3 mainstays, we are doing a lot of blending.
And I know no one can see this, but everyone remembers in in The Hangover when Zach Galifianakis is sitting down at the poker table and you see all the numbers floating around him. That's how Tim looked as he tried to discuss everything that was happening.
Dude, I don't know if Zach Galifianakis is a compliment or an insult, but I'm going to take it as a compliment.
No, he was taking that casino's money left and right. So don't you worry. That's a hell of a compliment.
I am a big Zach fan, actually. So
oh man,
that works out.
Shout out Between Two Ferns if he's listening.
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? I've crushed every episode of Two Ferns.
No,
side note: did you guys see the Kelsey brother dressed up?
Yes. With the purse. Yes.
Oh my. The
or the man bag,
the man bag, the shirt, everything down to it was perfect.
Yeah.
That was funny.
So we actually on YouTube, we did this video series called Between the Barrels, and it was supposed to be from Between Two Ferns, but our own spin on it. So it was kind of like it was. We were providing, it was educational, right? It's about providing some unique information about Chattanooga whiskey, kind of like a did you know? And then we tried to be playful with it. And it was fun. I think we did 4 videos. If you go back and look at it, it's like, it's nothing like Between Two Ferns. But we named it Between the Barrels because of Between.
Yeah, you have to be a classless dick to be his character in that show.
God, there's so many good ones.
He takes cake. But one of my things that got me going is I have not had the 99 malted rye, and I love malted rye whiskey. Like I really love the cinnamons and the other like the sassafras stuff that starts to shine in those. So that's really cool that y'all are doing a malted rye whiskey in that. And so you've named like 75 different malts, but has there been one that has been like that shined for you all that you're like, man, this is something that we have to go back to and show up, or maybe just something special with it because it just kind of played really, really well with what y'all are trying to do?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I mean, I really like drum roasted malts. I like darker malts. I mean, but honey malt is not really dark, and I love that too. They each really have their own unique character that serves its purpose in the flavor profile that we are after. If I'm in sales, and our whole sales team is really trained to try and simplify this message because Chattanooga whiskey is very complicated, right? And you can get lost really easily. One of the things that we simplify or really boil it down to is roasted and toasted, right? Like Chattanooga whiskey is the dark chocolate versus every other bourbon's milk chocolate. We utilize roasted and toasted grains. Just think of, sometimes in a presentation I say 91. Think of eating a s'more around a campfire, and 91 is your is the outside of the s'more. It's the honey graham cracker, but then you bite into the s'more, and there's this really, rich dark chocolate and marshmallow, and maybe even honey that's inside that s'more. And now you've gotten into 111. You've gone from 91 on the exterior to 111 on the interior. And so for me, I particularly love the caramel malted barleys and the chocolate malted barleys. But man, I mean, even the darker malted ryes that we utilize, like chocolate malted rye. Again, there's a lot more than these chocolates and caramels and honeys that I'm throwing out, but it creates what we call the bourbon drinker's rye, because it takes with a traditional raw rye grain, it's fairly one-dimensional. It's fairly spicy, and a lot of people don't like it that are bourbon drinkers, right? Like, I feel like all rye drinkers are bourbon drinkers, but not all bourbon drinkers are rye drinkers.
Yeah.
And 99, our 99 malted rye has absolutely bridged the gap for almost every bourbon drinker that I know, or that I have been with tasting it, that says, I don't like rye whiskey. They drink the malted, when they taste the darker, roasted and toasted malt grains, rye malt grains, they get a much richer drinking experience than your typical, raw rye whiskey. I'll also say this, like, we utilize malted wheat as well.
Yeah.
And again, like, wheat is a really soft, it just has a really like kind of soft, approachable character, like flavor profile to it. And almost like it doesn't even have a lot of taste, but it makes a nice whiskey, for a lot of people, because it's just kind of soft and approachable, right? I mean, a lot of wheated bourbons are just kind of easy sippers, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you malt wheat, it brings this like really rich kind of, again, like toasted or warmed up honey drizzled biscuit out of it. And it is, it's delicious, man. So we do utilize, like, we actually have malted wheat in our white port finish here. We've often used malted wheat grains in our BIB. So that's another one that I'm really fond of.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And you talked about like the different flavors and complexities you get because of the malted products. Like, I've been sipping the 111 tonight, and the 111 has just changed so many times as I've enjoyed the experience. At first it was, a lot of like warm, malty baking spices, chocolate, caramel, vanilla, right? Like they kind of all just were there. And then red berry started to shine. And then like, as I drank it, like it went from like this real rich, like fruity jam to almost like a bananas Foster covered in chocolate. Like it was just, it took me on such a journey that I had to pour another glass, because I was like, what the hell is happening here? And like, I know like my palate's pretty clean. I had a plain hamburger for dinner. So it's like, I know I haven't eaten anything crazy today. So it's been really cool to see. I think as you talk, my palate has been suggestive to my brain about all the different flavors, which has been cool.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. The brain is super swayed by subjectivism. And so it's been really cool to experience all the different flavors kind of mingle around.
Are you guys, so you guys are sipping on 91, 111, and do you guys have rye tonight?
So Jake does not have the rye.
Okay.
I just poured it because we started talking about it. And I was like, I gotta try this one now.
Yeah, I'll get it. Yeah, that one of those things about those swift kicks I was getting earlier, Tim, is I didn't get to see Scott to get all my samples, but I have kept a bottle of 111. This is my like second or third that I've gone through. And that's the other thing I wanted to say is like great job on pricing, like especially in a craft industry. Like sometimes you put out a 4-year and it's like bam $90, and you're like, oh, do I want to try that? And I've always thought your all's pricing has been pretty approachable. I think I remember picking this up at Liquor Barn for $40 was the last time I bought it. So like, I think for 111 proof, I don't know, it's non-age stated, so anywhere plus. And I think the sell sheet says anywhere 2+ years. But it does taste a little bit more complex than a 2-year-old whiskey would ever drink like to me. So, that's one of the things I find nice about it is an approachable price point.
Yeah. So thank you for that compliment. I mean, value is a core principle of ours. Whiskey to the people. I've got it on my hoodie. You probably can't. You can kind of see it.
There we go.
In the video there. That's about basically giving back to the community that gave us so much. The community rallied around us. And we wouldn't have been able to change laws. We wouldn't have been able to raise capital. We wouldn't have been able to build the first distillery in Chattanooga in 100 years. And so we're really proud that we put all this deep level of care and craft into the product, and then we offer it to the community at an affordable price point. Chattanooga's price point, our range is between $30 and $70. Maybe at an experimental, you might get one that's pushing 80. So if you include experimental, maybe between $70 and $80, or excuse me, $30 and $80. If you're shopping us at retail, if our whole lineup is there, including single barrels, will be between $30 and $65 on the high end. Our age range is on the low end, 2 years and 6 months. On the high end, we're pushing 6 years on some of our stuff. So it just depends on what the label is, right? So we kind of designed each of these labels to now that we have these flavor profiles that we're after. We love where these flavor profiles are landing, and we don't mess with age that much, right? We know we don't, nothing goes backwards in age, right? It's all, but we maintain a minimum of each of those ages for each of those products.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned this earlier about transparency being so important to you. This is one of those bottles that when you're shopping for whiskey, pick it up, turn it around, read the details, because it's all there, right? Even on the 99, the 91, the 111, it's all there.
Yeah,
so obviously
you're preaching. Yeah, you're speaking to my heart and preaching to the choir, because let me tell you something. There's the label is small because we want the bourbon to shine, and it made in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the embossing on the glass to shine. But there's a lot of information on that label, and most people don't read it, man. I mean, most people don't read any label of anything that they buy, and it can be a bit frustrating. But I think it is up to us to try and no pun intended, but distill these messages down. And because how many labels have blown up because they have the word toast on them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's becoming really popular. And Chattanooga Whiskey has been utilizing custom toasted barrels with independent stave since day one, right? I mean, since we started distilling our own liquid in 2015, we've been utilizing custom toasted barrels. But you got to turn the label around. You got to dive in to read that information. Now, some of that we're really proud of, and some of that we just need to do a better job of simplifying the message for the average consumer. But hey, that's what I'm fortunate to be here with you guys and explaining that. So,
well, I think like our audience, they're the whiskey nerds that do appreciate a lot of this. If you can get a consumer to pick up your bottle because it looks cool and it says made in Chattanooga, Tennessee, on the glass, on the front, that's great. But for the consumer that's looking for something different, it's like, this is the bottle to pick up, because I don't know how many bottles we get sent to us all the time. And you read it and you're like, I know nothing about this whiskey. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
And like, we got to go to the press release and pull up the details and pick through it and try to find some nugget of what makes this whiskey unique. It's not a knock on a lot of companies, but it does exist. But it's like, this makes it super easy. Just pick the bottle up and turn the damn thing around, and you can discover something unique and interesting, and maybe it'll convince you to purchase the bottle, especially when it's $60, $50, something like that.
And it's got the softest cork in the game.
And hopefully they'll support distilled Asian bottle then, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was talking about how easy the cork is to use. It's a great, simple, easy cork. Doesn't seem to break. Things that matter.
So on that subject, we've been utilizing real cork from Portugal since day one. So it's been a unique aspect of our packaging. And at one point, it was actually a wine cork that went down in that you actually had to use a wine key to get it out, and bartenders hated us for that. And then we redesigned it to where it's still a one-piece cork, but it is a T cork, so it's easier to get it in and out. And then we struggled with a little bit of, we have wonderful suppliers. I mean, our supplier relations are as important to us as customer relations. And but cork taint is a real thing. The wine industry has always struggled with it. So have we, and it might be a fraction of 1%, right? But it doesn't matter. Like, it's something that we have. Again, it has not been a serious issue, but we are switching to it's actually the exact same design. It's got the same firebrand at the top. It's the same feel to it, but we are switching to an all natural wood cork. So it's almost as far as the average consumer is concerned, you won't even be able to tell a difference. And I'm sad about it, but from a responsibility perspective to our product, and again, 99.9% of the time, raw cork is great, but Chattanooga Whiskey is not willing to risk even 0.1% of possible cork taint. And I know we've experienced in the past. And so we are with our same suppliers, because they are terrific cork suppliers. We are switching over to an all natural wood cork.
0.01% of the time, it doesn't work every time. So it's not good enough for y'all.
You put so much. The cork is beautiful, right? And it serves such a great purpose, and we get so many compliments on it. But you put so much effort into the product, you just don't want something, changing the flavor profile that's out of your control, right?
So when is somebody going to invent something that's just totally foolproof? I mean, the screw cap. I mean, I like screw cap whiskey every now and then, but just because of the price points. But it's like, is it glass? I mean, is glass just too expensive? Like, people just don't like
glass core sucks. They suck. Terrible.
Well,
especially when you slam them down in there and you break your damn bottle.
I guess. I mean, nothing's foolproof, because you're gonna have even like a really high quality cork. You're potentially somebody might be super rough with it, right, and snap the top of the T cork off. So I guess nothing is foolproof, but man, have you guys had a tainted whiskey before? Or do you probably
I've had a vintage whiskey that didn't taste like it should have, and I don't know what that was from, but
have you had a tainted wine before?
Yes.
It is even it just isn't good.
No,
right?
not
And
awesome.
it can leave a very bad impression. And so it's all I'd rather risk the cork being broken off once in a blue moon than the liquid being tainted. So
Agreed. No, I'm with you on that. So, just to get back to the whiskey per se, right? Will there ever be a time where the experimental is released outside of Chattanooga? Because I know that's something that some people meaning me, have always been like interested in. And Chattanooga is just far enough away from Louisville where it's kind of a hindrance to drive down there on a weekend for a release. And I'd probably get slapped by my wife if I left her here with 2 kids to go pick up a bottle of whiskey. So just curious if that would ever expand any, because I know it's such a small scale production.
yeah, so we have worked with Blake at Sealbox, which you guys probably are familiar with. We usually send a small, call it could be 5, 10, 20 cases of some of our experimentals. Our experimentals are usually no more than 3 barrels, right? So you're usually talking between 100 and 200 cases per batch. So, maybe anywhere from 5 to 15% of the overall release might go online to Sealbox. Most of the time they do, right? So I guess if you're one of the fortunate 30 states that Sealbox can ship into, then you do get to try our experimentals. And that's because there are a lot of people that have no way of getting to the experimental distillery. But outside of that, no, that's what makes the experimental distillery special, is that we're producing this product that you can't get anywhere else. We want you to have to come to the experimental distillery to be able to access it.
Good point.
Sorry, Jake. We're in Kentucky.
Yeah, we're in Kentucky. I guess next time I go play golf,
you do border Tennessee.
we do. Next time,
Sealbox can't figure out Kentucky for some reason.
Nah, they can't. But next time I play Sweetens Cove, I guess I'll just stop by the distillery. Swerve on in there.
Come on in. I'll play Sweetens Cove with you.
Man, we played the first year of COVID. We were like, we're not going to get it. We go down there. Next thing you know, somebody pops it, and then all 4 of us get it. Fun times. But the course is crazy good. Like,
it's fun.
The greens are nuts. They're absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's you don't think that playing 9 holes twice is going to be very fun, but
it's a blast.
Out there.
It's a blast.
Yeah. Before we were talking, if you guys want to touch any more on what's going on in Tennessee, we talked about Tennessee High Malt, of course, and malt relative to how Tennessee High Malt and how we explore. But I do think it's an interesting conversation about where Tennessee sits in the landscape of bourbon in the market and how that's going.
Yeah, no, I think that we definitely brought that up in our pre-show meeting 5 minutes before the podcast. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's really interesting, right? You have this idea of Tennessee whiskey, which is the Lincoln County process, which is made famous by that black and white distillery down the way. I don't want to take any of your all's thunder away here on the podcast.
That's fine. That's fine. They paved the way for a lot of people, so I'm good with it.
For sure. And then, a lot of other, and they really petitioned a lot of laws, right, for Tennessee whiskey, that style, to be known that way, to be different from bourbon. And where you all are a whiskey in Tennessee with your own style with the Tennessee High Malt. So, as we see here today, a lot of people may say Tennessee is, the second place where you would go to drink whiskey. And there's a lot of innovation happening out of that. So what do you think of just the landscape of where Tennessee is in the American consumer mindset from a whiskey perspective?
So I think that because whiskey from Tennessee or Tennessee whiskey is so popular across, the average consumer's, perception of where does whiskey come from, right? that has created an amazing opportunity for really any brand to start and be authentically made in the state of Tennessee. There's so much awareness, right? There's already like this massive built-in awareness that whiskey comes from Tennessee, like worldwide. So for that, we're grateful, and we're certainly riding coattails, you could argue, because of that awareness that's already been built over a really long period of time. I think that we have majorly benefited from the fact that Tennessee whiskey has not grown or has not been as far along in terms of its craft, or in terms of the distilling number of distilling licenses, or because of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail or whatever. That has left the door open for someone like Chattanooga Whiskey to capitalize on the awareness of whiskey from Tennessee and create what I would argue is not just a higher quality, but a deeper level of craft and exploration that hasn't happened in Tennessee. So you are starting to see it. I think Chattanooga Whiskey is challenging Tennessee to be better. I think we're challenging Jack Daniels to be better. There, I said it. I said the name. I think some of the things that you've seen them do recently, I firmly believe that has been inspired by Chattanooga Whiskey.
They play with the malted grain, that's for sure.
There are other brands coming out of Tennessee that are cool brands. The Tennessee Whiskey Trail has formed. We're founding members of it. We're doing our best to help it grow and help it succeed. It's a lot more challenging than the Kentucky Bourbon Trail because geographically, Tennessee is just more challenging than Kentucky is. With the placement of our distilleries, I mean, from southwest Tennessee, Memphis area to northeast Tennessee. I mean, it's like
3 days of travel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 10 hours. You know what I mean? So we're all over the place in the state of Tennessee, which makes our trail more challenging. But the number of distilling licenses has grown significantly. You're starting to see some decent aged liquid come out, which again, age isn't everything. But the point is, Tennessee is without a doubt growing. Whiskey from Tennessee is growing. It's making a name for itself. I'm not going to say. I guess I'll say it'll never be Kentucky bourbon, but it's not supposed to be, right? Like, yes, we make bourbon from Tennessee, but Kentucky bourbon has its thing, and yes, Tennessee whiskey is its own thing, but that's because it's a style of bourbon which can be made anywhere in the U.S. And just like Chattanooga Whiskey's Tennessee High Malt is a style of bourbon, and so I think innovation. Chattanooga Whiskey is spearheading innovation in the state of Tennessee, and I think Tennessee, this as a state, has an opportunity to be known as a more innovative style of whiskey, period.
Such an interesting take, especially since I just finished the book. Shout out to Drew Hanisch, The Lost History of Tennessee Whiskey, which it should be called The Lost History of Whiskey in Tennessee, because the Lincoln County, and Drew makes this clear, the Lincoln County process is not the end-all be-all. And I think that what Chattanooga Whiskey is doing, making whiskey in Tennessee to a specific style, is definitely interesting, intriguing, and challenging to a lot of whiskey makers, which is great.
Yeah, we are proud to be authentically made whiskey in the state of Tennessee, and we call what we do the Tennessee way, and that's our campaign right now. This is the Tennessee way. We believe we are the premium whiskey of Tennessee. We go above and beyond at every step of the process. We explore. Our level of craft is as deep as anyone's, and I think you can make amazing whiskey and amazing bourbon whiskey from Tennessee. So this is the Tennessee way.
That's that sales pitch that lead the charge. Now we're all going to go out and kick some ass, right?
Yeah, except I'm sitting in my office with nobody here. So nobody is fired up except for you guys. And you guys are in the heart
of our millions and millions of listeners around the world.
Yeah.
You guys are in the heart of the belly of the beast, right? So I mean, I don't know if you bought anything I just said, because you guys aren't you both in Kentucky?
Yeah, we are. But doesn't mean we can't be fired up about it.
Go back and listen to past 265 episodes. I bet that over half of them are not in Kentucky or
That's
not about
awesome.
Kentucky.
I love it. I
Yeah.
really respect you guys for that.
Well,
Thanks.
and there's just too much good whiskey not to talk about it, right? Like, I think that's the other thing that I think opened up my eyes. We got a chance to go down to Lynchburg, and it opened my eyes, right? Like, going and seeing, hey, like, it's not old number 7 that you're sipping with your Coke. Like, they actually have good whiskey, and you need to pay attention to what it's putting out. Same thing with you all. You all have really good whiskey that y'all are putting out, and you got to pay attention. Like, if you only drink one whiskey for the rest of your life, like, that's pretty stupid. Like, when there's just too much good stuff to try. Like, and, people always ask me, what's the last bottle of whiskey you'd buy? That'd be the bottle of whiskey you could have for your life. Like, yeah, I have an answer for that. But it's hypothetical, because I don't want to only drink one whiskey. My palate would get bored. I'd get burnt out. And so if you don't explore, you're missing out. And if you're not exploring what Tennessee has to offer, and especially Chattanooga, I think you're missing out from a consumer standpoint.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I agree with you. Friends come over to my house. They're kind of maybe not shocked to see that I don't have anything outside of Chattanooga whiskey. But the reason for that is because I typically take home 1 or 2 bottles of everything we've ever done and released. And so that has added up to damn near 100 labels, and hell, it might be over 100 labels now if you combine Riverfront and Experimental together. It's a lot of different products. And that's one of the things that we love about, well, actually, you said it at the beginning of the podcast. You said every time I revisit 111, I get something different. And that is the beauty of utilizing specialty malts in bourbon. And not just specialty malts, but that's the beauty of an unfiltered bourbon. That's the beauty of a Solera barrel finished bourbon. That's the beauty of blending different recipes together for bottled and bond, and for barrel finishing series, and for founders, is that every time you come back to a bottle of Chattanooga whiskey, I suspect that it's going to be a new and unique experience, even though for 91, 111, 99 rye, it is a consistent recipe over and over and over again. You're still going to get a unique experience from that. And I would assume that's what the bourbon drinker is looking for. Well, that's a dumb assumption, actually. I'm going to take that back. There's a lot of them obviously just want their tried and true. And I hope that 91 and 111 can be a tried and true. And I think it is for a lot of people, but I think it's a different type of tried and true, right? It's the tried and true where you still feel like you can be on your journey to explore and be revisiting the same label over and over again.
No, I'm right there with you. And I think the best advice we can give somebody is go pick up a bottle and see for yourself.
Agreed. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Well, Tim, man, it's been great catching up. 4 years is way too long. We got to do this again soon. Maybe we just figure out how to way to, use that awesome marketing budget you have to come on down to Chattanooga. See, you shouldn't have told us that.
We're stretched thin on it, man. We're stretched thin. Trust me when I say we need every dime. It doesn't over 16 states. It doesn't go very far. So I can tell you that. Just
messing with you. No, but would love to get down there and check it out. And we can probably make that happen for a getaway with our families for sure. But really appreciate you hanging out with us and look forward to what's next for Chattanooga and continued success and growth.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for having me. It was great to catch up after 4 years. I hope it's not that long next time. Come on down to Chattanooga. I think you guys will be impressed with the operation, the people behind it, and we'll play some golf too.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.